Hello everyone, hopefully you can hear me and hopefully the audio is okay. As always, we're starting a couple of minutes late and this time it's not my fault, it's Andrew's fault. As you can see, his chair next to me is empty. You can kind of see the armrest of his chair. But awesome to have you all here. I see we have Marek is first. Marek, how are you doing today? So I hope everyone's doing well. We do have some exciting examples to show you with RxJS, going from simple ones to more complex ones. So I'm actually quite excited about this because it reminded me of a lot of stuff that I forgot about RxJS. So people watching, and I see we've got quite a few people here, just say hey in the chat. And also let me know if you've used RxJS before or if you want to, or if it's completely new to you and it's just something you want to learn more about, just so I know how to tailor how to talk about it. And also, especially Andrew's doing part 2 where he actually is going to show you some real life project examples, and he's got some easier ones and some harder ones to show, so that allow us to know what type of ones to show you. So let us know in the chat. Don't be shy. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for taking, an hour out of your day to come and chill with us. We do keep saying we plan to do more live streams, and I still plan to do more live streams on my channel. But as always, things get busy, but we're going to do it. Andrew and me have just signed up to 100 days of code today. So I want to live stream my journey and hopefully include other people's journey. And I know Andrew will do a lot more coding than me because he won't get distracted with all that sort of stuff. That's why we always make a good team. That's why I love chatting to the community, because you get to see people's feedback, be it on the social side or the technical side, and it's really important. I really enjoy chatting to Marek and those of the others in Slack or in a Discord channel and so forth, and it's been awesome. Just to clarify, for Code Mortals, it's a Slack channel. Feel free to join that. There's a link on the website. And for my community, it's a Discord channel. So feel free to join that too. Right. So we've got a few slides. And I really want this to be a discussion. So my slides are really, thin and lightweight. And I want to learn more about what you will think about it, and if you haven't used it before, what your perspective on it is. And also, if you have used it before, why you use it, where you think it's strong, where you think it's weak. Because, like of every library or framework, whatever it is, there are pros and cons to all of them. So I've got one slide up. Hopefully you can see that, and hopefully the audio is okay. Right, don't be shy. Right, hello in the chat, everyone. I see you. You're kind of staring at the keyboard. You're a bit nervous. Let's do it. Right. Oh, I've already moved on. Okay. So what is the problem that RxJS is trying to solve? So as we all know, web apps are really complicated in 2020. They are. They're not like they used to be. And okay, yes, things go around in circles. How we went from server-side rendering back in the day to client-side rendering, and now we're going back to server-side rendering. All those sorts of things. But they are getting more and more complex. And yes, there's more abstraction, and things are getting more complex. You now have components which are amazing. All the encapsulation, but there are other things that we don't. How can I explain it? Other things that get more complicated with that, in that within a single page app, there are components now doing different things. They're getting data from different, API endpoints, combine the data, and then as I've listed here, they're also kind of filtering the data, maybe mapping it, trying to debounce any user interaction, and the user wants it all real time, wants it fast, it wants it now. It doesn't want polling every 30 seconds, or just so many things like that. Hey Jose, how you doing? Hope you're well. Great to have you here. I was just saying, I don't know if you heard, I've signed up to 100 days of code, and I'm really keen to get EddieBot on our Discord channel running this week with a few more features. So I probably need your help. But thank you so much for your input so far with that. I will be live streaming some of those sessions. But the user interaction doesn't want their web browser to go slow. It doesn't want it to take loads of computer resources, and it doesn't want things to be blocking. Like if you've got a chat on one side and you've got another panel on the other side of real-time data, it wants everything just to be seamless and smooth and run in parallel and asynchronously. That's just that's normal. That's what people expect. So what is the solution? I'm not getting to RxJS just yet, just speaking broadly and generally. And please give your feedback in what you think. And if you don't agree with me, then say you don't agree with me. And RxJS is a library that can be applied to any project or framework. I know Angular has it baked in by default, but you can use it with React. It can be a replacement for Redux, and we'll get into that shortly. Don't worry. I should have had an agenda page up. My bad. I should have put that slide in. So it's based on the observer design pattern. You've all heard me talk about design patterns before, from creational to behavioral design patterns, and to give you some exact examples, adapter, factories. I'm sure you've heard them before or used them before. This one is the observer design pattern, and it's about observers and subjects, and that can be broken down into subcategories, which I'll get on to shortly. I just want to keep it high level. Let me know where you're at and if this is good. If I lose you, ask any questions as we go along. Don't be shy. I do want this to be a conversation, not for me to kind of preach why I love RxJS. Well, actually, it's a love-hate relationship, because sometimes, yes, but we'll get to that too as well. Azing, awesome to have you here. Been a long time. Just here to give it a like. It's going to be way above my head. No, not at all. Ask lots of questions. It's I want to be inclusive, so if I say anything that doesn't make sense, let me know and I will go into more detail. We have time, don't worry. As you can see, Andrew's chair is empty, so his part, we have to kind of buy time for Andrew to get ready to show his part. He is showing the harder part, so we'll give him a chance. So yes, PubSub that you might have publish and subscribe, known as PubSub, or WebSockets you might have heard of. That uses the observer. So rather than polling and checking all the time, you're just waiting, listening really efficiently and in real time. When the publisher sends the data, the subscriber automatically gets notified immediately, and it's just so seamless. It's beautiful. Yes, Azing, it has been too long. We're going to all geek out on my channel and live streams this week. That's my goal for this week. Sign up to 100 days of code. So I need to do that. I think live streaming will help me make sure I do it. And also, doing it this way, things can be chained up. So you can run operators like filters, maps, like until, so you can end the listing or the subscription. And I'll show you some concrete examples, so don't worry, just a theory for now. And then you can also combine data, a bit like a promise all, how you can run things in parallel and combine it all together. You can also do that with RxJS, but the beauty of RxJS is you can keep things alive. So even if you had, say, I don't know, 2 requests go off to get data from a service or API or whatever it was, with a promise all, once it's got the data, it will stop. Whereas with RxJS, it will by default stay alive, and therefore if any new data comes in, it automatically continues to update the UI or do whatever it needs to do. So that's why it's really, really interesting. Right, and we can chain those together. We can do all sorts of awesome things. So this is the RxJS library that we're going to get into. But one thing I wanted to note is Praveen gave a talk on our channel. I think he spoke about this on our channel about TC39. It's about putting things natively into JavaScript and Node Engine, all that sort of stuff. Similar to RxJS, the observer design pattern has been proposed to add it to Node natively. And so that'd be interesting. Let's see how that goes. Right. Everyone's still with me? Let me know. Let me know in the chat that I haven't lost you yet. A bit of theory. I think when you see some practical examples, I've got a GitHub page I've got GitHub repo with some actual, I think like 5 or 6 actual examples, starting off with counters, going to multiple subscribers, different types of subscribers. You'll see even mouse events with some filters and some maps. You'll see it. It'll be good. Trust me. And if it's not good, you let me know. So it'll be better next time. So this is, I think this first line is actually from the documentation. RxJS is a library for composing asynchronous and event-based programming by using observable sequences. Cool. Marek's with me. That's good. Anyone else? If you're not, just be honest. So another thing they have on the website, which I thought was quite interesting, is I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Lodash, all the kind of missing bits from JavaScript that we would want. Well, they said, think of RxJS as a Lodash for events, which is really interesting. I actually convert my promises to RxJS, which again, I'll talk about later on. And Andrew will show you some examples of that. And the beauty of that is you can run all these awesome operators or keep things alive if you need to. So it breaks down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. And observable, that's the source. That's the one creating the events or the values or going to create them. And you have the observer, which is the one that's listening for any changes from the source. Then you have a subscription, which executes the chain of observable. And again, it'll make more sense when you see it. Then you have the operators, and these are pure functions like map, filter. You've got things like tap, which just run things in the background. If you want to do logging in the background, it doesn't affect your flow. It's really interesting. Then you've got subjects. Again, it's getting even sexier now. So subjects allow you to multicast to multiple observers. So again, I'll show you some examples, but if you publish some data, anything listening will get that data. It could be one item or it could be 5 or 6 items across the application. And you can then just publish it, and you don't have to publish it 5 times, or you don't have to check things 5 times or try and do any caching. It will send it out to anything that is listening within the application. And there are loads of things you can do with this, where you've got behavioral subjects, replay subjects, so you can keep a history if you want, or only a certain amount of history, and this gets like really interesting. And then you've got schedulers, like set timeout, things that you're probably already aware of. Connor, long time. How are you doing? How's everything going? It's been a while. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're enjoying the RxJS talk so far. Any questions, let me know. I'm counting on all of you to help me with my 100 days of code. I want to be live streaming, and I need all of you to kind of motivate me with... I've got so many projects on the go, but I think the quiz platform, Andrew's done an amazing job on that, but I want to kind of help out a little bit, and EddieBot, and I need to revive my Dashboard Hub project. So yes, lots of things coming up. Right, examples. Let's go to GitHub. So what have we got? Hopefully you can see this. If I make this bigger, here we go. So one thing I want to show you first is a range. And everyone's still with me so far? So a range is just going to count from 1 to 200. That's all it does. And then in the pipes is where you put... Hopefully that's big enough. Let me know if it's not. I can make it a bit bigger. And I can even send you a link to the repo if you want to have a look. Don't get distracted yet and look just yet, but for later on. So also don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It really helps support the channel. Oh, we have Andrew. Andrew, let me know when you're ready. I'll put your audio on. So we have RxJS range. And that's just going to kind of count from 1 to 200. And then the pipe is where we put our operators. If we want to filter things out, we want to map some data, say multiply it by 2 or square it or whatever it is. And then the subscribe tells the chain to kind of run, to execute. Nothing will happen without the subscribe. And oh, I don't like that example. I haven't put brackets around that. That's very inconsistent of me, Eddie. If anyone wants to submit a pull request, just putting brackets around that. Hopefully the code has got it in there, but I copied and pasted from the code, so probably not. And then this will keep outputting, so will keep running for every item that the emitter admits. And in this case, the range is the emitter, so it will go from 1 to 200. So we will get 200 console logs. Let me show you. What is the return of the range as an observable, right? So it is, the return from range is an observable. I'm doing this in JavaScript. I originally did this in TypeScript, so I could have all the types, but then I thought it might confuse people a bit, so I actually made it in vanilla-ish JavaScript so that we can focus on the RxJS. But yes, so the range returns an observable that allows us to then put a pipe on it where we can put all our operators. And I have got a few operators, take, filter, and map, to show you in the real example. Let's have a look. Where is it? That's a good question. It's on my other screen. That's not very well organized, Eddie. Oh no, I've got it here. Okay, this is really small. Let's make this a bit bigger. That's going bigger. Is this going bigger? Okay. Right, that's the wrong file. This is not good. Let me put Andrew on. He can talk for a minute about RxJS while I get my examples up. 1 second, Andrew. Andrew, you are now live, I think. Let me know if you can hear Andrew.
Yeah, cool. Sorry I'm late. I was gardening and completely lost track of time.
That's not what I told everyone. I told everyone you were saving the world.
No, I've started the 100 days of code. That's saving the world, right? I think I've dragged you into it as well by the sound of things.
That's
So
true. Who else has started or have done or is doing 100 days of code? Let us know in the chat.
I think it's one of those things you hear about. You think, oh, I'll do that sometime. I'll do that sometime. And having had several nudges over the last month, because I guess, been working on my own stuff this last month. I was like, why aren't you sharing it? You're sharing what you're doing. But yeah, no. So we're building up the little coding a little game platform, which after Eddie's talked through his examples of how to use stuff, we will show some live stuff that we've written on the game platform over the last month, so you can see a bit of RxJS in action. I don't know if we'll get a chance to make a few tweaks, but we might better make a few changes and obviously ask questions. And I don't know how much Eddie wants me to ramble on whilst he's fixing things.
I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Here we go. Right, let me make this a bit bigger. Cool. Massive. Okay. And then let me edit out some code.
Mark's going to start the 100 days of code today as well. I think the 1st of June is a good time to start, right? It's a nice sort of round number, middle of the year.
Starting. Yes.
So, yeah, awesome. We'll keep egging each other along, make sure we get every day in, right? I mean, I've not yet done, I have done some code today, but I've not done my, I'll say, official hour that I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. So I posted up, I think, on Twitter a day 0 as far as what's been built so far. And yeah, I'm going to do some more work on stuff after this. I'll post up my first hour this evening.
Exactly, and I'm almost ready, and I really liked that Connor asked a great question, and Jose's answered it as well, which is brilliant. And just to people who haven't read the chat, who aren't reading the chat, Connor asks, is it like a promise? It's like a promise on steroids, because you can keep things alive, whereas a promise executes and then it finishes. And yes, you've got promise.
Yeah, you can do so many more things. Absolutely. But yeah, I think someone did mention as well, you can convert a promise into an observable. So RxJS has something called from. So you can say from a promise, create an observable, and then it will catch the thenable event from the promise and feed that into your observable. And if there's an error, you can still catch that error in the subscribe as well. I don't know, is it you going into some error handling a bit later on this, Eddie?
I was going to leave that for you, but you're right. We will talk about that. Okay, I've got my first example to show. So these are on the GitHub link that I shared. And I'm going to keep it really, really simple. So what we have now is, it's just a HTML page. I'm just including RxJS over the CDN. And then I'm going to do RxJS range from 1 to 200. As I mentioned, it will just increment. I've got nothing in the pipes. I've commented that out. We will get to that in a second. And then I subscribe. And in the subscribe, I have a console log. So what do you expect to see? So range is going to outputs an observable, and then we're subscribing to that observable.
And you make it a little bit bigger on your screen, Eddie. It's quite small for people.
Sorry, my bad. Good call. Hopefully that's better. Okay, so and range will emit. So range is the source, and it will emit 200 events from 1 to 200. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You all can count, so it's fine. And ignore the pipe for now and the operators. We'll come back to that in a second. And then we subscribe to it. Oh, and I have got this on it in the code. Brilliant. It's just the docs are out. And then we've got console log. So what do you expect to see? I'll put you out of your misery. You should expect to see this 200 times, counting from 1 to 200. And
that's inclusive of 1 and 200. So you'll get 1 and 200 included.
Well, let me check. That's a good question. You are right. It is inclusive. So if I refresh this page, does it really quickly, like absolutely instantly? It's so fast, but it does count from 1 to 200. And you may think, well, that's not really that interesting. So let's make it a bit more exciting.
How can you slow it down for people? You haven't got it in there at the moment.
You've got your section. Don't worry. You can do all the hard stuff. I'll do the easy stuff. No, we'll get to that. We will, at the end, we'll go through some of these and we can go some back and forth and make them more interesting. So I've got some simple operators to get started. Let's not scare me just yet. So these are some of the operators we've got. I mentioned map. Let me pick map. So everyone's pretty much familiar with map, and it's a very similar sort of thing as the standard map, the RxJS map. What we're going to do, I didn't put brackets around these either. Got to be consistent. And what it will do, we've just got x plus x. So now we've got the same range, the same subscribe, but we've got an operator, which is a map. So I'm going to refresh the page, and as you can see, it goes up twice as high. So it gets to 400, but there's still only 200 outputs.
So in effect, it's going up in step 2 now because you're adding it together. So the first time it goes round, x would be 1. So you'll have 1 plus 1 is 2. So that would be the output that gets taken into the subscribe. You start with a 2. Same thing to the next one, it would be a 2, so 2 plus 2, 4, so on. So it would be stepping up by 2s effectively.
Exactly. So it'll start at 2 and it will finish at 400.
Jose knows the answer. How to slow things down, not quite so quick.
Okay, we'll get there. There's a couple of ways to do that as well. I think I might have a delay, but there's also debounce and there's some other things as well that it can be used. So I'll be interested in people's thoughts because they've all got their pros and cons. So let's do a filter as well. So a filter is, again, just like the normal ES6 filter. So I'm going to save that, refresh the page. What was my filter? Oh, yes. Oh, they were all evens anyway, right? Because I'm adding them. So let me just remove the map and put the filter in. So it's going 1, 3, 5, 7. Because I'm dividing by 2. So removing unwanted values. That's kind of boring. Now, this is where it starts getting really interesting. So as we said, we can unsubscribe. We're staying subscribed at the moment. This is not unsubscribed. So as long as this emits events, this will subscribe to it and output them. So what happens if we don't want to go all the way to 200? Say the 200 we can't control. So that's like a API request or a service, but we actually only want the first 10. Well, we can do things like take, and that will just take the first 10 events, and then after that, it will unsubscribe. Everyone still with me? So if I refresh it, we just get 1 to 10, even though there are 200 events that are emitted. And you may think, why do you want to do that? Well, if you're doing a normal API request over HTTP, by default, it does.
Would all 200 events still be emitted with the take 10?
I think so. So we find out. Let's find out. So what a tap is, I mentioned it briefly before.
I think it kills the subscribe, so you would only actually see the first 10. It will actually stop the events emitting, I believe.
Okay.
I might be wrong.
Yeah, you might be right.
It's one of those. I'm sure it stops it.
But we're controlled, I suppose. Yeah, you unsubscribe. But if it was multicasting, so say it was a service that was multicasting, and in one place we wanted all 200 events, which I've got an example coming up in a second, so you'll see that. And another place we only wanted 10, then the emitter will still submit the 200, but the only ones that are still subscribed will get it. Anything that's unsubscribed, either by writing unsubscribe or by using something like take, will then not listen anymore. Let's have a look. Oh, tap is not a function.
You missed operate.
Oh, yeah, thank you. This is why I prefer it so much in Angular, because it's just, I don't know, it just seems so much easier to use. Yep, Andrew's right. It does, because it unsubscribes, this stops emitting. But that's because we control it. If we didn't control it, and it was a multicasting, which I'll show you shortly.
Diraj, we started about 7, although Eddie was alone looking after things without me to start. 25 minutes in, you missed the first 25 minutes, my friend. I don't think we've covered too much. I think Eddie started out with a little bit of a chat, talking about his 100 days of code that I've convinced him to start because I started it today. Well, I need someone to do it with me, otherwise I won't do it all.
And Diraj is doing 100 days of code. I've seen his tweets, and actually I tagged you in the Discord channel, Diraj. I was asking you how it's going and what you're working on and stuff. But just to talk about tap won't block. So this is like a fire and forget. So you can use this usually for console logging or for logs in general and so forth. Right, that's range. That's like pretty straightforward. Just to recap, if anyone new, it's going to go from 1 to 200. Then we've got some operators here. I'm just showing that we can say after 10, stop. Otherwise, it would continue up to 200. And then we subscribe and outputs. And so like a promise, unlike a promise, it will keep outputting the data rather than just once. Okay, let's do the next one. What's next? Let me have a look. What have I got in my list? I don't know. There is a README somewhere, and that tells me what order it is in. So we have click event. Let's do click event next. I think that's I'm working up to certain things. That's why it is in a certain order for a reason. Okay. So click event. So we've actually now got on the page, we're going to have a go button and a stop button. And then we're going to grab those buttons. And what we're going to do is each time we click, let me remove the operator for now, so keep it simple. Each time we click, we're just going to get the X and Y position of the mouse click. There's no operators, so I've commented that out. let's go to here. What was this called? Was it called mouse? It's called click. Click. Right. Okay. If I make these buttons bigger, and we comment out the stop button as well because we're not using it, just so it doesn't confuse things. Okay, so you've got go. So if I click here at the top left, near the kind of the start of it, it's at position 910. If I come down to here, it's at position 1024. Over here, it's position 3811, and bottom right, it's probably going to be around 3824. Yeah, so around about that. So it's outputting the position each time I click, and I can click loads of times. And if I click in the same space, the console log just puts a number next to it. So clicking loads of times, it's going. So it's still listening even after the mouse goes away and I still click. So what happens if we want to stop listening? Well, I've put in a stop button. Let's grab the stop button and let's put in an operator. You saw on the last one we had take. Now we've got take until something is true. So we're going to take until the stop button is clicked. So if I refresh this, no events are coming through in the console log. And if I hit go, near the top left, say, of the button, it's going to be lower numbers. Near the bottom right of the button, it's going to be higher numbers. And if I keep clicking really fast in the same place, that number increases. Okay. So it's still listing, still going. And if we hit the stop and now hit go, nothing happens. So we've unsubscribed from that event. Again, I just wanted to show you another way to unsubscribe. So the subscribe will continue listening until you tell it to stop listening. So you need to be efficient. So when you pull down components, you need to, so when you switch between components or destroy them, you need to unsubscribe from things listening. Otherwise, things get out of control. Any questions so far? Let me know in the chat.
Memory leaks and stuff, right? The garbage collector won't clean things up if there's still an event active on there. So it's just good for the user. Otherwise, they could be on a website. Like imagine you're sat with Facebook open all the time and RxJS was just subscribing to things without cleaning up. You'd quickly run out of memory and crash the whole thing down, I'm sure.
Especially when you come to something like this, mouse movement. So I'm going to comment out again the operators. Let's start from the beginning. So if I change this to mouse. So if I move my mouse on the page, look at all those events. Look at that climb. That's going fast, right? Can anyone read them out? That's like really fast. A lot of events happening. I don't know. Can we get a number of how many there are, Andrew, in the console? But look how small this scroll bar is.
Don't think consoles tend to catch that. You'd have to do something yourself to manage how many events have occurred.
Okay, that's fine. I'll keep it simple. But if I move it anywhere on this page, we're getting numbers. Like you can see the numbers changing really fast. So that's how quick it is and how important it is to either filter, to throttle, or to unsubscribe as you need. Oh, a question from Jose. And before I get into that, nope, too fast. Let's have a look. I missed some of the chat. I'm sure Andrew's been keeping up with it. We'll add the delay shortly. We'll come back to that, Jose. Absolutely. Okay. D-Raj, glad you're doing your uni assignment. Question from Jose. Could you explain a bit about how RxJS does this underneath? Is this a browser API that they use to create observables? I know of the class event emit, not sure if they use it. Oh, that's probably, I don't know the answer to that actually, if they actually use that or not. I don't know if Andrew knows either, or if Andrew's can remember.
I've not tried to do anything with the raw library, so I've not looked at exactly how they do stuff. Yes, they will be using some of the built-in browser event APIs, I'm sure, and wrapping stuff around that. But I haven't tried contributing to look into it because I only tend to contribute on projects I have issues with, and I've not really ever had a problem with RxJS. It's normally worked pretty nicely. So
it has worked really well. They have deprecated some things, bumping from the most recent major version, so be aware of that. But yeah, I've never had a problem with it. It's very bulletproof. I think because RxJS is a port from Rx.net, and then there's Rx Java, and there's Rx for most languages. So the design patterns, the reuse, they follow the same process and the same problem they're trying to solve. So it's not like they're reinventing the wheel. So it was done before in Java a long time ago, and in .NET and so forth. So sorry I can't answer that, Jose, but we can look more into it and get back to you. So let's do a filter. Okay, let's start with a filter first. We've had a filter before, but let me show you another one. So we're going to filter out when the position of the mouse is greater than 500, continue, else just do nothing. So it won't unsubscribe, it will stay subscribed, but if I refresh the page, so if I move my mouse on the left, oh, I've come to the right slightly. Move the mouse on the left, I've done it again, less than 500, so nothing's happening, and as soon as I get greater than 500, it all happens again. If I get less than 500, it gets filtered out. So the events are still firing, but they're getting filtered out before it comes to our console log and our subscribe. So again, I come over here. I'm pretty sure there's one for Kotlin as well.
First time I think I got exposed to reactive programming was with Scala. Scala was a very good start point for me when it came to reactive programming. They're very big on event-driven coding.
And we're
if you
going
want to
to
learn more Scala. Oh, go on, sorry. I thought
no,
wasn't sure if you were going to go on.
That's fine. But yeah, Java, I think Java is a source, a foundation for all of these. So it's I'm pretty sure Kotlin had RX Kotlin. Yay, awesome. I was hoping it would. I thought it would as well. So we talked about delay before. I'm going to let Andrew talk about that. Here I've got throttle time, and I want to say anything that happens in 500 milliseconds, just discard it. So I'll only get every 500 seconds the next event after 500 milliseconds. So as I haven't refreshed the page, loads is happening. If I refresh the page and move the mouse around, I'm moving it around, but look how it's now coming out slower. It's because every 500 milliseconds, it will just take the next event afterwards. And there are different types of throttles and delays you can do where it holds the events and uses the one that happened in that time. I think that's what delay does. It holds the one that happened and then uses it, whereas throttle just ditches it and throws it away. So
I was going to say, it doesn't seem to be doing that. Throttle seems to be keeping all the events in the queue. So debounce time, I think, will throw away the old ones and only give you the most recent.
Are you sure?
But throttle time seems to be holding on to all the old ones. Move it around the screen again and then stop.
Okay. No hands.
Cool. Move it around a bit, more than just once. Move it around a little.
Okay, there we go. I'll do major circles. That's like about 1 million. I read the docs.
Debounce time does the same. Okay.
Okay, so I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to race through these. Let's have a look what we got next. What have we got next? Okay, now we're coming on to subjects, and there's just 3 subjects to show you, and these are pretty cool. Let's have a look. So we can start off with the vanilla subject. So the way this works, well, let me bring this over here as well. Actually, no, let me show you first. So you create a subject, and then we subscribe to it. And I've subscribed to it 3 times, and that's to show you that a single subject, which can emit multiple events, can have multiple subscriptions. So for example, I think Andrew might show you this, is when you log in, you might want to update the user profile object, and you might use it in the top bar of the screen at the top with their name and profile picture, but then in the footer you might have a log out button, so you want to do a check there, so you can broadcast it to loads of places in the app, whatever's listening. So in this situation, we have 3 subscriptions listing to the same subject. So, and then I do a broadcast. So I say subject next, message 1. So what do you all expect to see? You'll see subscription 1 and then whatever we broadcast. So we'll see message 1, we'll see subscription 2, and we'll just see message 1 again. And same with number 3. Let me show you. So there we go. So you have 3 subscriptions, 1, 2, 3, but they all get the same message. And we could increase that if we wanted to 5, and the same thing will happen. Oh, I can't count. And then even if I do another message, they will all just repeat. So if I refresh the page, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the first message, and you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the second message. That's pretty cool, right? But let's get even more sexy. Everyone still with me? Write in the chat, hey, and let us know if you're still with us. Any questions, ask as we go along. So let's have a look at the behavior subject. Right. Okay, this makes it a little bit more interesting. So with the behavior subject, you can start off with an initial message. So what we've got here is we're subscribing again, subscription 1 and subscription 2 to the same subject. And then we broadcast 2 messages. And then I subscribe a third time after broadcast 1 and 2. So I'm kind of like re-changing the order here now. Cool. Jose's with us. Steven says, yep, we get the message 1 ID. Cool. Okay. So now if I go back to Chrome and I want behavior, I've called it. Behavior. So now if we've got behavior, as we said, it would be subscription 1, subscription 2, then message 1, 2. So we have subscription 1 and 2 get message, which is the initial subject. So the subject is starting off. So as soon as someone subscribes, they're going to get this default bit of data, a message. It can be anything. It can be a number, it can be a string, whatever, an object, whatever you want. But these two subscribe and they get that. Then they're going to subscription 1 and 2 are going to get message 1, as you can see, and subscription 1 and 2 are going to get message 2. But then subscription 3 has subscribed after message 2, so we'll only get message 2. There's no history for it. When you subscribe, you just get the latest event. Hopefully that all makes sense. Everyone following along? Cool. I'm glad, Connor, I'm glad you're loving it. This is good. I'm loving it too. When I went through this, it reminded me of things I forgot and so forth, so it was really good for me as well. Cool. A behavior subject seems to work like a generator in JS. That's like next is like yield. Exactly. I haven't used that too much in JavaScript because I use RxJS, but from what I remember reading, it does sound very similar. We're going to take it a step further, and I want to rush through a bit more. I'm conscious of time, and I know Andrew's got some really real life project examples to show you. So the last one I want to show you. Well, Andrew.
I was going to say, you might have to show, because I was just thinking a moment ago, how am I going to actually control your screen, because we didn't get ourselves set up on vMix, so you'll have to probably navigate around. I can talk a bit. But anyway, okay. Carry on. Replay subjects, they're much more fun.
Yeah, replay subjects are pretty cool. So now we've got a replay subject. And again, it's the same thing. You just create a replay subject, but what you pass in here is not the initial message. What you pass in here is the history to keep. Evil laugh. So here I've said 3. So we're going to subscribe, and then we're going to publish a message 1, message 2, message 3, message 4, and then we're going to subscribe again with a third subscription. So what do you all expect to see? While you're having a think, let me change this and hit enter. Don't look. I want you to see. I want you to guess. Okay, I'll put you out of the suspense. So subscription 1 will get message 1, and subscription 2 will get message 1. And then both subscriptions will get message 2, message 3, and message 4. Same as all the others. But subscription 3 comes in after the messages. And we've said only to give us the latest 3. So subscription 3 will get message 2, 3, and 4. And so if I change that to 2, oh, not my brightness, and refresh it, now you'll see subscription only gets message 3 and 4. And if I change that to 4, yes, you guessed it, it will get all the history. So if something subscribes later on after the events have happened, you can then still have that subscription get the data if you need. I think it's really awesome to as things change or people are updating, updating data, and something changes in the page, and you don't have to like kind of save that data and pass it in. You can just use the replay subject, and that component will automatically have the events that it missed, which I think is just so awesome. Right, I hope everyone's still following, and if everyone's enjoying it, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Thank you very much. Right, now on to the real stuff, and I need to drive. So Andrew, what do you want me to bring up?
We can start looking at the authentication piece you mentioned, because that does have a subject in there, and there's quite a lot going on in that authentication service, so we can just have a drill through it. But yeah, we'll just spend 15, 20 minutes just have a look through some real examples of how we've used RxJS.
Let's have a look. Okay. And Stephen says it's awesome. It's like replaying a queue-like event-driven design. Exactly. That's why it's just so awesome, and that's just honestly, is really only scratching the surface of what it can do. Right. Let me bring this over. Okay. Let me close all these files down. I wasn't doing any work anyway. And then Andrew can drive where we want to go. Okay, in hosting. And don't forget, you can use RxJS on client side as well as on the backend, so on Node, and you can convert any promise, as Andrew said, using the from into RxJS, and then you can work with it in real time.
So you'll see that happen a few times on here because we're using Firebase, and the SDK, or what we use, the library we use, produces promises for everything today. It would be nice if they release an option that has observables, but we'll see. So yes, if you want to open up, you're in directives at the moment. If you want to close the directives directory down, just go in, in core, but go to the services because that's where most of our RxJS stuff happens.
So this is Angular and Firebase, just to let people know. Sorry, Andrew. And so it's TypeScript as well, so you get to see the types too.
So you see, we start out with a behavior subject at the beginning. We're declaring a behavior subject. We're starting out with null. So we're assuming when you first come to the site, we don't know who you are or anything about you because we haven't yet checked in. Now, because we're using Firebase's auth, we probably could have started that with a value, maybe something to look at. But we're using a behavior subject. So anything that subscribes will get whatever the latest status of the user is, which is useful when we go to different components that require users' data. We don't have to go and query anything or set things up again. We can just use the latest copy of the user data. So there's a few things that go on in here. We'll ignore some of the things like the login. We don't need to talk about that. We can go to the check logged in if you want. That's got a few little bits going on. I think you're on a rather old version, though. You're missing a lot of code.
Let me just do a pull. Sorry, my bad. I was working on my laptop.
I'll talk through this one whilst you pull it. But there you go. It's refreshed. Okay.
There we go.
Okay,
login, register. Oh yeah, it was really out of date. Okay, here we go. Checked.
Okay.
Check login. Logged in.
Okay, so we start off with the Firebase's auth state, which actually does produce an observable. This is where Firebase is a little bit weird, right? So Fire's auth state is an observable, but other things are still promises. So we can go straight into piping off of that. So when we're using RxJS in here, we use pipes. You did have pipes before, actually, so we're okay. Yeah, people have seen the pipes. But we're not having to specify RxJS operators because TypeScript is loading in the correct ones for us. So at the top of the page, if you want to show it quickly, I suppose you can, you'll see there's some imports. So we're importing a few things here. We've got behavior subject, from, observable, of, all coming from the core part of RxJS. And then the operators that we're using in here are map, merge map, take, and tap. Did you talk about merge map before I joined? I
didn't talk about merge map, no. That's like promise all, but so I'll let you talk about that.
Not quite, but yeah, okay. If we go down to check logged in, we start out with a merge map. So what merge map does is it allows you to, map, when he showed it, he was doing x plus x. So he was converting a number and doubling it, so everything became like 1 became 2, 2 became 4, using a map. A merge map is similar in that it will give you a different output that you can use on the next pipe. So whatever the output from a map is gets used on the next one. So you can see there the merge map, the signature for the first one is user, but the signature on the second one is snapshot. So that means the output of merge map is producing a different value called snapshot. So we can change what gets sent between each pipe. Otherwise, if you weren't to use maps, it would be whatever the previous one was. So where you'll see tap later or you saw tap earlier, that's not changing the value. It's just doing something and then going to the next step. But the difference between map and merge map is merge map takes another observable and will execute an observable. So rather than map being just standard sort of plain JavaScript, merge map expects there to be an observable sent back. So you can see the output here is using Angular's Firestore. We're going to a collection. We're getting some users out, and the get at the very end of the line is returning an observable. That observable is actually a document snapshot. So again, we do another merge map in there. and you can see a bit deeper down, there's a second pipe that's nested inside. So what we're doing is we're sending off an email. We're saying if we need to verify someone, we want to verify them. We're going to then create another observable. So we either use an of null or a send verification. This is if we need to verify them. So line 113 there, I know it's difficult for Eddie to highlight them, but on line 113, we're saying if the user is verified, then we don't need to do anything. So we're just going to create a null observable that we can use. Otherwise, we do want to send an email. So we're going to call this send verification function that will send off an email to say, you need to verify your account. After that, we can then pipe into that and we can create our user record and update the user. I won't go into what those do, but we're mapping Firestore's user record to our own user record that we want to use. And we're also updating any values if we need to tell it, for example, the user is now verified and so forth. What that then finishes with on line 121 is a map where we call next on user. So user was our behavior subject at the start, and we're just going to pass in the new account data into the behavior subject. Now I'm trying to think, where do we call this from? We call this function from a router, I believe. I don't even want to go hunt around for it. I think it's in the app, the top level app routing. Eddie's on the search for where it gets used. So you can just see how we call this. Yep, so we've got it on a resolve in here. So Angular, for anyone that's familiar, uses something called resolves. So whenever a path or a URL is called, you can use these resolves in Angular to perform something before the site will be displayed to the user of the browser. So if I was using my browser and I was browsing something, the resolve will happen prior to me being shown anything, which is really handy when we want to check someone's logged in or get their account data. So this is literally just saying resolve, and you'll find this resolve is being used at the very top of the application. The first thing it does is check this. And if the user's logged in, great. Otherwise, we'll carry on anyway. So we're not actually doing anything particularly clever in this resolve. We're literally just getting them to be logged in, assigning the behavior subject with the user, and then that allows us to use the user record anywhere else on the site. So an example of where we would use that.
And before you go there, did you want to talk about why you have a take one and the catch?
Okay, so
or do you want to come back to that? It's up to you.
We can talk about that now quickly. So the take one. So again, because of Angular uses observables. You have a resolve. However, Angular will wait to complete the resolve, so it won't show you the page until everything that is going to happen from that observable has completed. So in order to complete it straight away, we just want to take the first instance. We don't want to keep listening for potential user record changes that might be going on in the resolve. Any user record changes we would listen to elsewhere, or we would publish out from elsewhere. We wouldn't want to do that on the resolve. So we have to take one. So we tell Angular, just use the first record, see if we're logged in or not. If there's an error that occurs, then we want to trigger a false, which would in effect say you can't get to this route because something's gone very wrong. Shouldn't really happen, but it's just belt and braces stuff, right? If something does happen to go wrong with Firestore and an error occurs, then we just want to send the user somewhere else, a 500 page perhaps. However, otherwise, it's just going to be true. So regardless of whether the user's logged in or not, we're just going to map a true back because we want to continue, either to show them you can log in by pressing this button, or you're now logged in because you can see your user details there. We don't really care, but we do care if an error actually occurs on Firestore, because it might be we've got a misconfiguration of our deployment, I suppose. That would probably be the main reason that might occur. We might have cycled some API keys or something, but there would be some sort of server misconfiguration most likely. So send them to a 500 page would probably be the sensible thing in that case. Obviously, we're not here to talk about Angular and how you would do that, but that's effectively what it's doing. Is Angular is expecting either a true or false to come back as to whether or not it can proceed to the next step. Okay.
And we've got a question before we go on to that next part. Stephen says, so RxJS pipe is something that returns an observable. Merge map allows you to string observables that you have done something with in RxJS. Is that like a middleware pattern? Do you want to take that, Andrew, or shall I?
Yeah, so you can effectively keep stringing them together, but you will lose the original output. So it won't keep the old ones unless you do something with it. So if you were to have another subject somewhere that you're storing things as you go along, you could keep it. But otherwise, you'd be stringing a set of observable events together. So one example, I'm trying to think. If you go to the messages service, that's probably got something more interesting in it of how you can keep the history, I guess. Yeah, that one. And if we go down to where we get the more find all, so it'll be a bit lower down. Yeah, so this is a bit more of a nested event chain going on. Looking at the very top part there, the first few lines from 46 through to 50 is us querying Firestore. So we're telling Firestore we want to get our games collection because it's a gaming platform. And then inside that game has a chat that goes on, which is another sub collection. So we have some messages, we're ordering them by when they were created, but we're only listening to the ones that get added. We don't want to get everything that happens. So if someone's done an edit, for example, we probably want to manage that differently. The find all is only interested in stuff that gets added. So that's just how we're configuring Firestore to run stuff. But a bit more interesting down here is where we do this deep merge map. So we first of all map all the messages, and you'll see that map. What's it doing? It's effectively telling us to get the data out. So state changes gives you back a wrapper, sort of a document change. And we just want to get the data out. And if you could see off the side, we're telling it to give us estimated timestamps as well, because when Firestore first creates something, the timestamp's not quite there instantaneously. So we tell it to estimate the timestamps. Again, we're not here to talk too much about Firebase. Merge map here is the interesting thing. So we've got a few things going on inside this merge map. So we are going to change the data and mutate the data. And we're going to do that from an observable. But what we're effectively doing in all of here is we're getting the user's data to go with that message. Because, well, we could be storing the user's data. But let's say I change my name whilst doing this and people start wondering why is this different person keeps sending messages. It will always keep us the latest name. Again, we could argue there's some efficiencies here because maybe it's acceptable to have different names if someone wants to go around changing their name and sending messages. But what we're effectively doing is we're mapping all the correct user records against the chat conversation that's going on. There is a fork join in here. So you can see fork join effectively works. This is where you get that promise all effect. So if you use a fork join in conjunction with a map, you can run through an array. So messages is an array. So this map here is not an RxJS map, just to really confuse you. This is probably the one thing that confuses me the most when I'm working with Angular these days is you've got an array map and you've got an RxJS map. The two are slightly different in what they do. They do map data. They do allow you to reformat it, but they do work slightly differently as far as one's an observable and one's an array. But yeah, we can take a fork join and we can actually say map through the messages, and for each user, go and look up that user data. And that is effectively allowing us to chain merge, but the merge map to change the data. But we no longer will have access. Well, we will still have access in this case to the message data. Sorry, I'm jumping around as I try to think exactly what's going on here. So we will keep the message data because it's really hard to highlight stuff. What we're doing on line 63 is we're taking the original message, we're deconstructing that into a new object, but we're also adding the user's data into it. So it's keeping the original message and adding the user's data that we've called in back to it. Is everyone with me there? It's a little bit more complicated.
I think
fork
so.
join runs or everything in the array. So the array here is an array of observables that's coming back. So the map is returning an array of observables from that user service find one. The user
This is a
server
HTTP request, just to let everyone know. This is going a call to get that user. And then the fork join is like a promise all. Is that correct, Andrew? So it's all happening at once.
Everything inside there. So they're running asynchronously all at the same time. We don't care about the order. So fork join will run them all in parallel. So if there was 1,000 users there would be 1,000 requests all going off in parallel. And we don't mind that happening. It will bring them all back in order at the very end. So the order will be maintained at the end of it, but fork join will just run them all in parallel.
And there are other ways you can do this. So say, for example, if one failed, if you wanted to ditch the whole thing and not continue, or if you wanted to ignore that one and ignore that one that failed and continue, if the order isn't important, is important. There are a load of operators. I mean, has got a lot of stuff. But again, just like with Git, there's loads of features out there, but probably mainly only use like 10-20% over and over again, because web apps is, if it's for a bank or a social platform or a fintech, I said bank, or government department, they're all kind of storing the same type of data, and it's the same type of workflow and all the rest. So there is a lot more out there, but you don't really use all of them. It's good to be aware of them. I think that's where the T-shaped developer comes in. It's good to be aware of them, so you know where to look them up. But then there's the ones that you use on a regular basis that you know well and know how to use.
Now, if you were to look at the imports at the top of a couple of the service files, you'll see the common ones we're using, I guess. If you open up the services folder on your left and just go through a couple of the service files.
Thanks, Spectra, for that tip. That helps.
So you can see we've got from, observable, and map. So observable is just a type. That's just for TypeScript, really. So we can use the word observable as a return type. From is giving us the ability to convert from a promise to an observable. And map is just that most basic of mutating data and changing data that comes through from the result of the observable. What about another service? What else we got? Just explain what a few of them mean. So fork join, we said that's a bit like a promise all, but for observables. So you can pass in an array of observables, and the array does have to be an array of observables. You can't just be an array as in a normal JavaScript array. It has to be an array of observables. So those could have been a list of promises that you've wrapped froms around. So you've taken an array, you've put froms around them all and made them into observables. You could then use fork join to run them. Observable, we just mentioned, that's mostly for TypeScript. The of at the end, that allows you to create an observable from a non-promise, I suppose. So a string or a Boolean, they could all be used to create a starting observable from. So if you wanted to start your observable with just a string of hello and then append world to it, you could do an of with hello as the string in there, and then pass that along to a map perhaps, and add the world statement to it. Obviously, that would be a bit of a silly thing to use observables for, but that's something you could do if you really wanted to. And then map and merge map. So I think we've covered map a few times. And merge map, very similar to map, but rather than returning a sort of a primitive type, I guess, you're going to return an observable again. And that observable will get executed by RxJS before the next step in the pipe runs. Yeah, of an empty array. Yeah, so you could start something with an empty array. I can't remember where I did that. You spotted it must have been in the messages service, I guess, down here.
It's down here.
So we're starting with an empty list of things, and we're going to add things into that list, yeah. But just in case the list is empty, so we might have ended up actually having a completely empty list, I suppose. That's probably why that's there, because that messages map could have been just null. There's nothing in there.
Well, Stephen, I don't get it. Thanks for the thorough explanation, Andrew and Eddie. Don't forget me. I was here first, actually. I'm calling it food bank fintechs are the new thing. I don't get it. Food bank fintechs are the new thing. Yeah, there are so many cool things you can do. I mean, let me bring up the docs real quick and just show you kind of, how huge it is.
Yeah, I think the other common ones are things like tap, right? We use tap quite a bit for just triggering something off asynchronously that you don't want to interfere with your promise, your observable running. That's probably the other main one. But really, there's only probably 5 or 6 you use. You use debounce a few times. So I think there's one where we start the game and it does like a countdown before everyone starts going. We use debounce to run that. Actually, no, we're using timer to do that. Can you talk about timer?
Here we go. You can see, everyone can see there's like loads in here.
It's a bit like set interval.
Here's an example.
Yeah, so you can say, yeah, it's there, right? Starting after 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, so 3,000 milliseconds, every second, so every 1,000 milliseconds, is going to put the next one out. So you can delay the timer beginning, or you can purely just the next one down, the timer 5,000. You can always be at 5 seconds. So it's just whether or not you want to change. I don't think I've ever used the first one to be honest. I think I've only ever used the second
It's
one.
weird why that's first. That should be second, right? You want the simplest one first.
But yeah, timer 5,000. So yeah, that's the sort of thing you might do if you wanted to notify all the users. So because we're using Firebase, we have the real-time data passing around. And sometimes you might want to, when a change is about to occur, just warn people that there's some new data in case they need to save something. So you can show them a little timer. So you've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds before the new data is going to be displayed, which is quite cool. Yes, RxJS is heavily used, Spectra. We were just showing a little bit of code from the game. I think we're wrapping up quite soon, unfortunately. But if you watch the last couple of minutes, you'll see us talking a little bit about some of the uses of it in the game.
And we can always have a part 2 if people want to go deep dive even more. There are loads of operators. I do recommend having a look and having a play. And
Eddie and I are also doing the 100 days of code, right? So are we going to be streaming a bit of code? I don't know if we're going to do something together or not, but we should try and do a weekly one where we do our 100 days of code together, perhaps.
All of the above. We should stream individually on our channels and stream together at the same time. I think that's good. We'll do all the above.
Yeah,
I was going to add something. I forgot.
You might be on Dashboard Hub or something, I guess. If you're doing your individual session, you might want to reboot that a bit.
I need to reboot that. It's on the list.
For a bit longer because I want to add a few arcade games. So during my 100 days of code, I will be doing a few things with Phaser probably.
Nice. Jennifer's not here with us at the moment, but I think she's been this week. Well, no, last week she was using Phaser as well. So she's done some cool stuff with that. That's quite cool. Nice. I think I shared the link to our game that we made.
We need to do a bit.
Sorry, go on.
Come on, sorry. I was saying we need to do a bit more with Phaser because we just literally got started. I think we did like 5 streams learning Phaser 18 months ago, and we built a little arcade game in 5 streams. So just based on that, it's quite powerful how quickly you can build something simple.
Absolutely. And I went to a talk in London where someone built a similar game using RxJS. They built Space Invaders, they built Flappy Birds, they built Mario. I think Andrew, you came with one with me where they built like Mario Kart, but really, really simple using RxJS, which was quite interesting. Yeah, Spectra, that's my goal as well. 100 days of code or 365 days of code, just to get back into it. Absolutely, I think that's important, and everyone here the community here is so supportive. It's awesome. It'll help us all move forward together. But do have a look at these and see. If Andrew mentioned fork join, interval, there are other ones that we haven't mentioned. There are so many, but we use
index. Sometimes filter. I think you showed filter earlier.
Yeah, Pluck's quite a popular one. I can't remember. I used this once before. I don't remember why. Come to an example. Oh, it's to pluck certain parts out of an object. So if you've got an object, instead of mapping it, I think you can pluck certain properties out. There's so many. It's awesome. It really is impressive. But again, as I mentioned in the chat, it's a love-hate relationship. Had to Google what Phasar was. Oh, we can quickly show you what Phasar was. GitHub. I think we had it on our old channel, right, Andrew? Twitch Coders.
Yeah.
And then we had it, a Warp Blaster, we called it. I think Andrew came up with that name. And then this is the game.
We'll have to use the same name when I convert it over to use on the gaming platforms. I'm going to take this game. This is going to be the first one we have. Is going to be this game. It's going to be a little bit more advanced, so hopefully. This
is the game that Andrew and me built. Mostly Andrew, actually. I think I started it, and Andrew put the hearts, put the rocks getting smaller and smaller. Oh, and the power up! Damn it, I missed the power up. Let
me see if I can share the link to that as well on the chat. Hang on.
Do that. Let me get hit so people can see.
Let's have a little play around with it.
So lost a heart. It's a bit. Heart. Oh, one left. Really the power up. So this is what we built, but on the gaming platform, Andrew wants to add some games like this in addition to the quiz platform. he also wants to add a game like this. So let us know. Oh, security vulnerabilities. Yeah, probably. It's been so long out of date. Got 15 asteroids. Game over.
Yeah, no, it's at least a year ago, right?
Oh,
two
it's
years ago,
two
it said.
years ago at least. Yeah.
April 2018. God, time flies. I thought it was only about a year. It's 2 years. But yeah, well, I'm going to rebuild that game and yeah, add a few more features so you can actually like have a proper ending to it rather than yeah, it's just a little bit kind of. It's more like a mix between asteroids and I'm trying to think of other games that do this, but
Yeah, we could use RxJS, right? So you can't press fire too much and you can reduce it.
things like that. Where at the moment you can just spam the fire button, right? You should probably limit it so you can only shoot 5 times and have some proper power ups that maybe give you more powerful shots that can destroy even a large rock with one shot or something. I don't know.
Exactly. Um, please, somebody build 2020 the game. How much effort was it to get that sort of thing going? I think this game, I probably just took like a few hours, right, Andrew? And we built it on a few
Well,
streams.
did I do any time out the stream? I think I did a little bit out the stream, but not much. Maybe a couple of hours. So let's say 10 hours of effort. I think in
For the
total.
first time to use it is not bad. And
I mean, the code is probably pretty horrible when you look at it. It's not very organized as such, the code, but it was surprisingly quick to build something like that. I don't know how well it works on mobile either. That's something that's going to be interesting because we want to try and make sure that the games on the game platform are mobile friendly. But if Phaser isn't, we might just make it that the arcade games you have to use on a PC. I don't know. We'll see.
And the other good thing I think would be we were talking about adding Firebase to this so you can get high scores with other people. Well, it'll be within the platform, so you'll get that anyway. Maybe multiplayer. I don't know if that's possible. I'm pretty sure it would be. That would be pretty good, Andrew, I think, if we could do multiplayer.
Question, I guess, just how performant Firebase might be. I mean, there's other services inside there, right? It might be something else we can use for streaming the data between two players. But yeah, to start with, I think it would be a couple of single player games, and then we might convert a few to multiplayer if it's easy to do. But for something like this kind of game, if you're doing like I don't know Pong, or even I guess 1v1, it needs to be quite responsive. You can't just have like a 2 second delay between I shot you and now you shot me.
Yeah, but Firebase is actually pretty fast, as we've seen. It's
Firebase is, but is it fast enough for a game?
yeah.
And also, what happens if it drops events or something, or plays an event late? Um,
I don't know. We'll have to. Yeah, turn-based games are fine. Like if it was, and like battleships or
yeah,
something, it's fine.
so yeah, we'll certainly do like a battleships type game where it's more turn based, and something like Firebase would certainly work for that. But I've not looked at some of the other real time services that um, Firebase or even GCP, I guess, has. So if anyone knows of any cool ones that might work for building a game, let us know, and we'll have a bit more of a look into it. But I certainly don't want to go trying to build my own hand built gaming platform for multiplayer. I'd rather use something that a cloud host has already got.
Absolutely. So I hope you enjoyed. I have this. Wait a second. Last slide. Real examples. That was Andrew's. Questions. There you go. But you've been asking as you go along, and I'm conscious of the time. I know we didn't want to go too far over. We wanted this to be an intro into RxJS with some real life examples. I know there are lots of videos out there and talks that did just show the theory side. I think it's important to have the real world examples. So hopefully it was interesting and useful. Any questions, you can still catch us on the Slack and so forth. And yeah, I mean, I had fun today. Going through the presentation reminded me of what RxJS can do and things that I forgot, because there is so much to it. If you don't use it often, then you do forget. Anything else you'd like to add, Andrew?
We always use RxJS through Angular. I mean, that's where we first really got going with it. So whilst we've looked at the docs a lot and played around with things, we don't really use it vanilla like you did just now. It's normally out of something like Angular. But I guess if people in React, I don't know what people in React world see, would they see more of the vanilla style doing things? Because TypeScript isn't there out of the box. Well, I know you can add TypeScript on React, but
Yeah, I've
there's
seen.
definitely RxJS with TypeScript, I think.
Yeah, I have seen people use React is using TypeScript more, which is good, and I've also seen people ditching Redux to use RxJS on React. So with the subjects, with the various subjects, you don't need this dumping ground of Redux, which is I think slowly becoming an anti-pattern. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times, 2020, 2021, seeing what happens in the React world. So I know Angular has embraced TypeScript and RxJS, and I think it's actually been at the forefront a lot of what's been happening. So I know React recently got resolves, where they call them hooks or something, to do blocks to block the request going, the page loading until it's got the data, which Andrew was showing you earlier. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times. Let's see if anyone has a React project and they want to put in RxJS. Let us know how it goes, and we look forward to having a look. Stephen says, I get acid redux when I use React. It's terrible. Yeah, it's a small library, right? It's the view, and if you're using it just for that, it makes sense. But as soon as you want to build a proper application, you got to include various things, and then a few months later, those third-party libraries aren't up to date anymore. And yeah,
I'm not. I'm not going to take the hook on that one, but yeah, we have a lot of opinions around Angular versus React versus Vue, and where's the right time to use these things. But yeah, I think React is great for people that are starting out and want to get into writing single page apps and trying things out and doing prototypes. But I think if you're going to build a project for, let's say, that's going to be around for more than a year, it might not be the best choice because it does start to, I'll say, become cumbersome unless you've got some really good people running the top of it to manage that stuff and have experienced some of the things that can happen.
I'll be interested to see anybody using React if they do use RxJS, and see if it makes their life, easier, not having to include things like Redux and so forth, and allowing components to talk to each other more easily without kind of having, like I said, a dumping ground like Redux or something. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Let us know how you all get on. But I think when pubs open again, I'm going to ask all patrons opinion on Angular versus Redux versus Vue. It's going to be mayhem, I'm sure. What do you think of Vue? It's the middle ground between the two. I haven't actually used Vue, but lots of friends who have, they say that, yeah, it's the middle ground. And it's quite interesting. I think it is on my list of things to do one day.
Yeah, I know people like Dave, right? They've used it for quite a while and they loved it to start with, but they're now starting to say that in some cases they've chosen the worst option that they could have done from the two, and in some cases they've chosen the best option. So it's still a bit kind of Marmite-esque, I guess, in that sense. For those that know what Marmite is, I mean, we might have people around the world that don't know what Marmite is. Love-hate relation.
It's a very British thing to say. Vue crew. Okay, cool. Stephen, we look forward to hearing more about your thoughts on Vue sometime. That would be good. And Marek and Spectre, thanks for joining the Code Mortals Slack channel, and we can continue the conversation in there. Don't forget to also give the video a thumbs up. Is my finger in the picture? Yeah, it is. Cool. It really helps support the channel. And if you haven't subscribed before, do subscribe. Everyone, have a great day wherever you are in the world. And Andrew and me will see you on our quiz on Friday, if not before, on this channel or our own channels as well.
Well, we're going to have to do into code, yes.
Exactly.
It's going to be the 100 days. When does that finish? I need to put a date in the calendar so I can have a party when it's over.
Party stream.
Although it'll probably, right, we'll have converted from 100 days to 365 days.
Yeah, it's true. We'll keep upgrading. Hey Zeus, awesome to have you here. You've been very quiet on the chat. Zeus is another. Hey Zeus is another Angular developer, and yeah, I think RxJS is always an interesting one to cover, and we can do some more deep dive into RxJS examples, real life examples, if people want in the future. We can do a part 2. Thank you all for joining, and we will see you all soon. Let me get my other mouse.
Yes, we'll see you Friday.
Yeah, see you Friday for the quiz. Have a good week and join 100 Days of Code so we can all support and motivate each other.
For those that are here, should we give them a hint? There is going to be an RxJS round on Friday, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. So I hope you paid attention.
Pay attention, watch it again, because I'm sure there'll be at least a couple of questions from what we've just gone through on Friday's quiz.
There will be. That's a good clue. Well done, Andrew. Bye all. See you Friday, if not before.